somebody's used the McDonald's chatbot, came back with a really sophisticated answer and gave him a snippet of code.
I solved the AI problem by using AI again. AI can do more tests, but then to query those tests, I'm using AI again. At the end of the day, investors and shareholders are ultimately concerned about money. The wrong shareholders will just slash because they just see it as a number, an expensive number.
Yeah, people know that it's not selling the product. It's more like brand awareness of something weird and wacky. It's like hey, this is a brand story that we just want to push out there using AI.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Prompted podcast. This is episode 11. Obviously I'm Chris Nightingale, joined again by Nick Hanley. You all good, Nick? How's it going?
Yeah, good man. I think since we last spoke, there's been, I say this every episode, but there's been a lot going on. Just been down at the Pulse Summit in London, run by Vivant. Josh Hobson's done an amazing job, as he always does, so a big shout out to Josh. Nice. I've just come back from Sweden as well, which is pretty fun. Got some friends out there, so I've just had a bit of time off, having a bit of a relax. And yeah, I think probably the bigger one is we're getting really close to Performance Manchester, or should I say Performance MCR. Charlie hates it when I say Performance Manchester.
Really?
Yeah, she does. But yeah, the lineup's like really shaping together, and big thanks to all speakers such as yourself that have submitted decks already. So we're having a look through those. Nice. But yeah, I just want to give Charlie and Beth a massive shout out on this one because they've done so much legwork. Because I've been less involved, just given the new jobs and other things going on. They've really been carrying everything. So a huge shout out to those guys, and yeah, excited to see what the event looks like. Cause I think it's going to be, well, it will be bigger and better than last year as well, which is still an amazing turnout. Yeah. So yeah, all good stuff. What about yourself? Anything, or is it just being life as usual?
Life as usual, but with deck season, I think, at the moment. I don't know if I've just submitted myself to too many talks or not, but I feel like I'm doing so many decks and then trying to do PPC on the side. It's quite intense. But yeah, Performance MCR, I'm really looking forward to that this year. It was great last year. There's like some sort of festively vibes this year as well.
Yeah. I'm not going to ruin too much, but you'll see from some of the email comms that have gone out that there's a bit more of a theme this year that Charlie's been sorting out with an events organizer, and it looks pretty special. So nice. We've got that with I have just as well, we've done a fringe event, so we teamed up with RTB House, if anybody knows them. Great programmatic provider, but the team over there are absolutely phenomenal. So we did a roundtable on that a couple of weeks ago, and it was really good. It was on consumer loyalty, which is one of the things I actually wanted to speak about today at some point. Sweet. And the impact of AI on consumer and customer loyalty as well. Nice. So I think we've seen some pretty rough horror stories of people integrating with websites, and it's completely decimating experiences.
It's so easy to like lose trust, which is not measurable in our kind of performance marketing ways, where we go a click equal to sale. You don't measure trust in the same way. I remember I was talking at Brighton about it, actually. I was saying misspellings are so commonplace in PPC. It's so easily picked up on, but Americanisms, M-dashes, misspellings can just blow trust of your brand to say, if they paid to put that ad in front of me, imagine what they're going to treat me like as a customer, or like send to my house in a package. Are they just going to chuck it over the fence and that sort of thing? So it just goes such a long way. But again, it's just so hard to measure. It is. We don't look in the terms of, that ad strength wasn't excellent, or that CTR wasn't 5%, then we don't think in the eyes of trust.
Absolutely. And I think trust is a really hard one to measure in general. Like, even if you look at other, ways of measuring media, like if you go down the, MMM route, or you go down incrementality route, you can measure, the impact that media is having, but the actual channel tactics and the stuff you're talking about around, creative or misspellings or, M-dashes or things that, become a lot less human, like the only thing that you can do is test to see whether it has an increase or decrease within sales volume and, the contribution of them. So I think that trust metric is something that would be really interesting to explore down the line. And it's something I think would probably need a lot of work to understand, but there might be people out there that have already done it. So if you have got a trust metric that you swear by, please let us know, because two performance marketers are probably not the people to look at.
We're scratching our heads a little bit. It's just so difficult to measure. One thing that is also kind of potentially influencing the game is how these chatbots, Gemini, ChatGPT, how they like present brands. Do they present it in a bad light? And I remember doing this for a little bit for AO when it was all kind of new, this chat world. And I was saying, when someone mentions fridge freezers from Samsung and they sort of suggest retailers to buy it from, do they present AO in a negative light? Do they present it in a positive light or a neutral light? Where do they get their opinions from? Is it Trustpilot? Is it Google reviews? What is that? And it's an interesting place, but I think ultimately, I think reviews is a good place to start. But then we all know that reviews can be manipulated and faked. So absolutely. It's such a minefield. world, but to get an understanding of true trust is really hard to do.
I'm trying to think of a way that is possible, probably anecdotal as well, is looking at referring trust. So if you look at social as a big one, and I feel that social has become, or like content creators that are talking about products views, and if it's more organic, I think that it can create trust markers, and I think it's almost, I won't say replacing trust engines, review engines like reviews.io or Trustpilot or the rest of them, or Google reviews, because I will still go on Google reviews if I'm looking at, say, a new barber's, or I want to understand the experience somebody's had at a coffee shop. Like, I will still use it, but I think for that community-led trust angle, I think social is becoming a hell of a lot more important, and I say becoming, it is incredibly important. Definitely. And I see that as a completely separate topic, but a really good marketing angle for a lot of businesses is actually using content creators or getting people that are creating UGC and getting real people talking about their products and their experiences as well. Yes. And actually start buying the rights to that. And most people will be like, one, I'm appearing in an ad, that's pretty cool, and two, they're getting paid for it. And for us, it becomes a lot cheaper instead of having to go down the influencer content creator angle, which you can spend an absolute fortune getting 1 20-second reel or clip to be able to promote your product. So completely different topic, but
it's really interesting.
It's something I'm looking at the moment, and how we can measure the impact of social and also the impact of PR as well within the social realm, especially when it comes to LLM performance of looking at referrers. Nice. And you do find that PR and social are quite strongly linked to decent LLM performance as well. Nice. It's pretty cool.
That is cool. There is one tool, actually. I know we kind of have the tools corner element, but there is one tool that I know from a mate of mine called James, who's done something called Rupert. And that is like a social listening tool where it kind of feeds back if there are people that are saying bad things about your post or your ad, but likewise it flags sales opportunities. So if someone said, this is really cool, I'm really interested in this, it would flag that person and it buckets them. But you can also quarantine negative review. It will understand the sentiment. And I mean, I would never really advise quarantining or deleting comments, because I think it's freedom of speech in a way, isn't it? And you don't want to just hide all the bad ones on a post, but it can quarantine or delete posts based on what's in that topic. So, it can really help a business's point of view perception. It can identify sales opportunities, but it can also understand what the pain points that customers are having, and then give you that in a very succinct way.
It's interesting on the quarantining side of things. Anecdotally, I used to work for one of the largest telco providers within the UK, and funnily enough, whenever you put social ads out, the main comment you would get is people complaining that are current customers about speeds or around the customer service they're getting. And it was a really hard sell to tell the business, like, we should potentially leave these up and answer them, with like more of a human touch, instead of it just being a, hey, contact our centre and we will get back to you, and other bits like that. But it was a big bugbear of theirs, and probably one of the largest challenges is to change customer sentiment towards them. So whenever you put anything out on socials, sometimes we did have to turn comments off, because the idea was we're showing a cool package that somebody could get, and showing how it would impact a gaming sphere, or how it would impact homework, and then you just get people being like, my broadband is terrible, and it instantly puts people off going and buying that product, or even experiencing it. Internally they were doing an absolute load of work to try solve customer satisfaction. Right. So it was almost like the latency effects of terrible customer service, or shall I say customer service that may not have been what the customer wanted. It long outstripped all the work that we were trying to do to change customer loyalty or customer sentiment as well. So I think it's the only time I'd say quarantining comments, or pausing or turning them off is actually worthwhile.
Makes sense. Of course, as always, this episode is sponsored by our friends at Opteo. They help advertisers minimize waste and maximize performance. So go and check them out. Say hello to Ben and told him that we sent you. It's a great tool. I use it a lot, and worth having a look at. And then when you mentioned influencers kind of before as well, have you heard of Chloe versus History?
I've not, no.
Worth YouTubing. I hope I've got that right. It's an insane YouTube channel. Again, I think on our last episode, we did talk about the rise of AI channels. This is one that I forgot to mention that's almost getting 1 million views per video.
Wow.
And it's very educational. So, for example, this persona called Chloe, and this guy has made up this woman, but she looks fully real. He puts her in different scenarios. So it might be one time she's on the Titanic, one time she's in Rome. And it's very educational. educational. She'll be in Rome in a Roman outfit. There'll be goats walking by. She'll be talking to like a Roman athlete, and then she'll be talking to like a Roman, I don't know, king or whatever you call them. And she'll just be like telling the audience, like, one shot's her handheld, like obviously there are phones in Rome, but she'd be walking through Rome with a handheld talking to you about history. Then she'll tell you what a Roman house looks like. And it's just so educational, looks completely legit because it's based on seed dance, but she's completely fake.
That's fascinating to see that type of content. And I think given that AI content, has always felt quite, like formulaic or quite, like big picture, like, movie-esque to an extent. I think taking, like that style of content and, blog content or vlog content, and trying to make it, more appealing to people.
Yeah.
And also that first angle, and like not trying to objectify an AI, but an attractive woman walking through and giving you history angles, even whether it's right or wrong. So I imagine they may not fact check, or they may do, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think it makes sense of why people are absolutely loving that, because it's got all the elements you'd want, where you've got somebody relatable, you've got the style of content, with it being handheld, and then it's got an interesting angle of somebody actually going and walking through a place that people actually do want to understand a lot more about.
Yeah.
So I think there's some other things. I was actually just pulling it up quickly, but I was having a look at AI influencers, because I know that there's an absolute massive amount of AI influencers out there, and there's some huge ones which I just it baffles me that that's the thing. But there's a few of them. But there's one called Kyra that I know because I've seen the content of the AI, but it's not massive. It's classed as I suppose a micro influencer, like 237k thereabouts on Instagram. But they're an AI fashion and travel influencer, and they're now generating money, and they're getting sponsorship deals.
Wow.
Based on the content they're posting.
That's insane.
But there's some huge ones as well. There's some Korean ones, like I cannot remember the name of them, but you've got like Granny Spills and stuff like that, which is a 75-year-old AI influencer that has 1.9 million followers. That's absolutely nuts to me.
People are following nothing.
Yeah, people are following a fictitious person that doesn't exist, but is still there.
Yeah.
But this is the whole thing around talking about brand, like brand sentiment and the influence and creator space in particular is like, do people care, or do people just like the content as well? Like, I think there are two camps, right? Where I'm camp, I want to see somebody that's real do something really cool, but I think other people don't seem bothered about it, and they're quite happy to follow these people. And I do wonder if it's a form of escapism, or an idealized life, or other bits like that. Social media is an absolute plague, let's be honest. And I'll say that for a man that feels high and mighty, because I'm not on social media, barring LinkedIn, which LinkedIn is changing quite a bit, and I'm seeing a lot more content at the moment that is more, I'd say, Facebook friendly over LinkedIn friendly. I know you get the zealots that are like, oh, we shouldn't be doing this, but I'm like, people are changing with the times and the content people want to see, right? Like, not everyone wants to see super technical content, or like people want to see, here's what I did on a weekend, or here's my dog, which, to be fair, I actually do like those posts.
It's more personal, isn't it? People care about people buy from people do not just necessarily want to see a suit and a word like a Word doc every day of the week. They want to see something engaging, informative. But I think behind the influencer is a person, and that person in Chloe versus History case was doing research, and they were developing the script, they were developing the scenes. Just because it was like a different woman doesn't necessarily conceptualize like the research on the back of it. So I think a lot of people love the research, and the sort of the woman or the character just happened to be in a fixed way. Do you know what I mean? But what's really interesting, I think the BBC or a different news organisation went round. They'd obviously seen the video, contacted the YouTube channel to say, we want to do a documentary behind the scenes in terms of how you've done it. I think they were expecting to see a version of Chloe answer the door, and this bald man with glasses answered the door, and he's like, yep, I'm Chloe. So it felt a little bit like catfishing, but he's the guy that generated and produced the scripts, all that kind of stuff. And it's fascinating that it was a one-man band that's now got 1 million views a video, which
is absolutely insane to think about. And I do find the juxtaposition quite funny. You're expecting like probably a young woman in maybe a early to mid 20s to answer the door, and it's just this bald bloke with glasses on, just like, yep, I'm Chloe. It's
in the spare bedroom.
But do you know what, props to them as well. Like, I think if it's used for AI, used for good and entertainment purposes, I'm not actually against. Whilst it's not necessarily my thing, I don't see a problem with it, unless it's like creating some form of, how do I put it, like some form of harm or, you know, something that's completely unattainable, which is why I find the AI influenced content incredibly damaging, especially, you know, on, I suppose, people that maybe are more impressionable than me and my 32-year-old self that, you know, really doesn't care for socials in the slightest.
Same. But I'm like you in that I just use LinkedIn and that is my only stop. I know loads of people that engage on Facebook and LinkedIn and they want to connect with families and stuff, but even like Facebook's changed over the years, where it used to be connecting with your family and saying happy birthday to your brother or sister, whatever, and now it is literally, you will see so many ads and so many corporate content. It's changed a lot. But back to the AI space, and I don't want to necessarily go down the political route too much again, but I know that Iran have started to produce a lot of Lego-based propaganda out there. So they're using...
Sorry, that is AI. A wild sentence to start with.
Yeah, I know, right? You know, whatever their views are of Trump, whatever their kind of message they're putting across, they've built scripts, put them into AI, and to build Lego people, or Lego Trump, Lego Iranian soldiers, whatever, they're pushing messages out there through it. And it's getting a lot of attention, even from Americans, because they just think, you know, the ones that there'll be some Americans obviously in America that don't like Trump. They find that sort of thing funny, and I don't think Trump will be liking it. But it's so interesting that you're just able to put propaganda out there in a different way. I mean, I'm sure Lego aren't too happy about it, but you know, it's so easily doable, isn't it?
Yeah. I think taking political views aside, and I know where we both sit on our political spectrum, but I'm also aware that audiences might have slightly different views. I think taking that aside, it's quite inventive, and actually it'd be quite interesting to understand how they came up with that strategy. I'm moving, you know, propaganda aside and, you know, the political affiliation. I think we need to be very aware that we hold certain views and, you know, incredibly leaning one way, and I don't want to, you know, tarnish this podcast with it being political driven. So I know we have had other episodes that are maybe a bit more political driven as well, but I think it'd be interesting to see what brands end up doing, because I know there's people like, you know, Duolingo, I say people like the company Duolingo, which had, you know, quite an out there content strategy. They've recently just stripped that back, as I believe like the, you know, trying to bring it more centralized and, you know, be a bit more concurrent instead of having, you know, the different regions do bizarre things like, you know, the German, the DE region had, you know, I can't remember what the Duolingo bird, the owl. I think it's an owl. I cannot remember for the life of me. I'm briefly pulling on my social experience, but it had it going into Bergheim wearing a leather harness, and I'm like, that's absolutely nuts. But I'm wondering if people start using AI to harness these absolutely nuts or, you know, interesting angles and takes, and actually start using it in that sense, where people know that it's not selling the product, it's more like brand awareness of something weird and wacky, instead of it being like a, hey, we're trying to push this product and we're obviously using AI to do it. It's like a, hey, this is a brand story that we just want to push out there using AI. Yeah,
absolutely. But I think it also sort of increases the lines of where does copyright sit within it, or like with Lego, with other brands. Really interesting point, Studio Ghibli, they had, when AI was first coming about and ChatGPT and all these other platforms were producing Studio Ghibli-like content. So for example, you could have a picture of a couple, it would turn it into Studio Ghibli, and it looked legit, but you're completely ripping off like decades of artists' hard work and graft. So there's definitely going to be a red line here, I think, somewhere. Even with Seedance, which is something I've been trying to use to do a few ads, as we talked about in the last episode, I think that engine was used to produce a completely made-up fight between Tom Cruise and Brad Pitt, and then they were having a full-on fist fight. That's obviously never happened in the movies, as far as I'm aware. And that sort of scared Hollywood, I think, because they saw how easily it was done. You've seen some examples that I've showed you and how cinematic they look from certain angles. You can be hard pressed to find out if it is real or not, but also, is it actually them or not? Again, creates a lot of issues for deepfakes and the rest of it. So it's a minefield. But I think on the back of that, positively, if we sort of switch it a bit, I think the detection tools for AI now are going to be vast, because they need to be, don't they?
I think I completely agree. But I think the AI detection tools, I think there needs to be a lot more work and governance done around. I know if you post on, I think it's any Meta platform, you know, you'll get essentially it's an AI generated image sticker, but I know there's things that you can do to get around that, you know, where there's multiple saves, changing file formats, editing in Canva. You can do that for LinkedIn as well. If you edit something in Canva, it can, you know, bypass certain, you know, content restrictions and, you know, things like that as well. But I think there needs to be, like, much like we have, you know, like the ad policy, you know, like hashtag ad, like years ago, and, you know, like people had to declare that, you know, there were given a product or sponsored products. I think we really do need something and more rigor around, you know, AI detection, but also being literal with it to say that this is AI generated content and making people aware that that's what they have to do. So as far as I'm aware, I'm not sure if there is, and this is my my knowledge isn't vast on this and it's actually incredibly limited and shallow. I don't know if there's any AI legislation in the UK that actually says you have to tell somebody it's AI generated content, or do you know that there's certain things, and not just in the ad space, but in any space. So yeah, I think there's probably more to come, and we're probably playing catch up because it's developed rapidly, and probably lawmakers are trying to keep up and understand what's next.
Yeah, and I don't mean to flip this away too much from ads to just general AI, but if you look at like scams, and I'm not sure if we talked about this before, but scams could probably be a lot more sophisticated now. Where before it was just taking your voice, now it could take a video of you or a picture of you, and start saying again like, I've lost my car, I need some money, etc. So it's going to be an interesting space, but I think it needs to change and evolve pretty quick.
Moving on to a slightly lighter topic, I saw on LinkedIn, and it absolutely made me howl and it made me crease, because somebody's used the McDonald's chatbot on site and used it to develop code, which is
mad.
Absolutely insane. A guy called, I may butcher his last name, but Charlie Wagner posted about it. I think it might have been a couple of weeks back, how he essentially got the McDonald's AI chatbot to write code and write Python to essentially look for a certain, he wanted to essentially look at link requests, I believe, and he was like, I'm going to try ask an AI bot to do it, and the prompt of the post was stop paying for Claude, which is really funny. But he managed to embed this prompt that he gave to the chatbot, where he was actually asking about how many chicken nuggets you should order. But before he even got to that point, he literally was like, before I order my chicken nuggets and ask you more questions on it, I need to understand how to use Python to do some backlinking for this particular client, and then went into, and how many chicken nuggets should I order? And it managed to trick the system, which I'm assuming there's guardrails within that system that would normally be like, oh, we can only answer questions based on, products we have or other bits like that. But it came back with a really sophisticated answer and gave him a snippet of code and also how many nuggets he should order as well, which was absolutely hilarious. But I think for me, it was just a really interesting one of companies really need to be careful with what they're, the guardrails they're putting in, because whilst this is very light and incredibly funny, I think he called it the grimace bot as well, which made me laugh even more. But like, there could be potential use for nefarious activities and people using it for, say, less fun things or less work related things. But yeah, I thought I'd just bring this one up because I found it absolutely nuts that somebody's been like, I've used a chatbot on somebody else's site that's powered by AI and got it to answer questions, which means I don't have to use my own tokens.
Oh, that's insane. I mean, we're talking here about one of the, let's say, easily top 10 companies in the world.
Yeah.
So you would have thought they'd have been pretty sophisticated with their guardrails, and even someone like this guy who's just maybe a one-man band type dude just could go in and just wreck it. So it makes you wonder like what maybe not a top 10 company might allow within their chatbots. I've heard of chatbots before about just doing some absolutely crazy things, being able to like, I don't know, reduce the price of a product, or be able to return stuff for free with no return, whatever that is, like some insane things. And if it's connected to action, as in if it can purchase something on your behalf, or it can order some chicken nuggets, it rather than just produce information, imagine how many things it could potentially do with no or little human intervention. Like buying 1,000 chicken McNuggets at 2p. Let's say. I mean, not that would be possible, but you can just imagine all the variations of things you could do. And it's quite terrifying. But I mean, the fact that it's happened is quite funny, but also quite a bigger eye-opener. Speaking of Claude, though, like for me, I've found Claude, which is why I don't use it too much at the moment, apart from the free version. It's really expensive, but it also is quite limiting. I keep talking to it, and then it's suddenly, right, you can't talk to me until 1 p.m. today, like 2 or 3 hours away. Or, I get a report on the number of credits that I'm using. They're vast, and it's there's so many other options out there. It's probably worth it. But for me, I'm just going, Jesus, how many credits is it using? And there must be other options out there. I don't know.
Have you changed up your setup then? Because I'm still using Claude and Gemini, but I know that this week I wanted to speak about the new models that have come out for ChatGPT and Claude. But I think since the new one for Claude has come out, it has become a lot heavier in terms of token usage. So it's Opus 4.7, I believe. But I can't remember the name, and I know that we've spoken about it before, but there's a few tools and a few businesses that have sprung up that are essentially getting you to connect your chatbots and LLMs to their systems, and they're finding ways to decrease the amount of tokens used per prompt, which is really, really interesting. And it's like, they gave a practical example of if something was going to cost, say, 47 pence, it then costs maybe 12 pence by running it through them. And the idea is that, it offsets cost. But I think people are getting smarter of how to, query chatbots and how to, reduce the token size. I know, yet again, I can't remember the name, and I should have probably done a bit more research on this one, but there was the man that decided he was going to teach Claude to speak like a caveman. So it gave very simplistic and very straightforward answers back, and it managed to cut down his token usage by, I think it was something like half.
Wow.
Which is pretty mad to think about it. But yeah, I do understand where you're coming from, and I have seen it as well. Luckily, I am, Claude Pro. Like, I have been looking at, the high level packages.
Oh, yeah.
Even sometimes during the day when I've used Cowork and I'm just, doing a bit of data analysis, it does time out, and I'm like, oh, for God's sake. But luckily for me, and I think this is something I want to speak about anyway, in terms of, the physical demand versus cognitive load of AI in particular. But luckily, I can still go in and do that analysis. It might just take me a bit longer than it would have done. Fair. But for some people that rely completely on it, yeah, they're going to be a bit screwed. And I feel that we're going to see this across every different platform over the course of the next year in particular, where to claw back, money and to claw back profitability. Because let's be honest, for all, dare I call it, a massive circle jerk where each of them are investing into each other. Google's investing into Claude. You've got, Microsoft investing into things like OpenAI. And we've got, all of them that are essentially, it feels like they're propping each other up to an extent. And that's going to have to stop at some point. Yeah. And shareholders are going to be probably incredibly pissed off that, it's a massively inflated stock at the moment, or massively inflated investment. So yeah, I think that a lot of platforms will try to claw back money. ChatGPT through ads. I know Claude said it'll never use ads. I'm not sure if that's true. I think it probably will happen at some point. But I reckon increased tokenization of people having to spend more to do the same is a way of doing it.
Yeah, it's the good old-fashioned model of get everyone in cheap and then slowly start to pile it all up. Great example is Uber Eats. It used to be Uber, then they got Uber Eats, and that's obviously a platform that's growing massively. If you have a look at what stuff they have now, the big order fee, they have a couldn't find your address fee, they've obviously take commission from the drivers. All these fees, they're making huge profits year on year based on maybe similar, if not slightly higher sales, based on these fee changes. And it's insane. So I have no doubts that the cost of a credit across all platforms will be increased, and we just probably need to be smarter as marketers, like the caveman analogy, which I really like, as to how we can get more from less. How do we make it smarter without spit? Because no one wants like a 2,000 essay for, where do I need to go to get my groceries? They want something succinct and to the point of what they need, rather than using up too much data. And I think that's going to be the kind of how we play Claude and play the system. Or we just talk to McDonald's and hope that it gives us our answers.
Yeah, well, I hope I might start doing Burger King instead, or use something different. Just like down with a man, and we'll just abuse their AI systems and chatbots. But no, it's nuts.
What a mad world, eh? What a mad world.
But I suppose moving back onto something that I have just spoken about as well, and I think it's quite an interesting take, and I spoke to a friend about this over the weekend around about how they're using AI. And I think for me, the way I use it is very different to them. They're in public sector, they're not using it for work as such, but they're using it as, an engine. But they're saying that, they would love to use it for work. And I think in marketing, we're very fast adopters. And as much as, the barrier to entry for marketing is quite low, so your adoption rates might be, varied. Like everyone seems to be using AI in some way, even, for very different purposes. I think there's an interesting piece on the physical demand versus cognitive demand of using AI. And just to explain this, because I know that I'm throwing a lot out here, the physical demand to me has actually, decreased, like, to do data analysis or to read a long document or to even get ideas for what slides you want to produce. The physical demand has massively decreased, but the actual cognitive load and the cognitive demand of how much we have to think has stayed exactly the same. And I think I wanted to pose and get your opinions on this is I don't think it's particularly healthy, because I feel that people are having to do a lot more now and doing a lot more tasks because AI sped up the physical side of it, but we're still having to put ourselves under the same like mental strain and mental load, and that it can lead to probably burnout a lot quicker, where I can spit out maybe 2 or 3 tests, for testing like some form of incrementality, but I still need to think about them and think about how it works and the test designs, and that takes so much brain space to do. But now I won't say I'm expected to do more, but clients expect a quicker turnaround.
True.
And it's just like, it's a point where it's like, there needs to be that give. And I'm just interested to get your take, because I think it's something that isn't widely spoken about.
Yeah, I think I've seen that as well. I mean, you expect to run 10 tests instead of 2 because it's easy to do so, but you're expected to know the results of those 10 tests, like the in-depth results of creative A versus creative B, click-through rate of creative A versus everything in one. And yeah, you're right, it's a lot of data to try and realize. Now, I've tried to use AI to help me find answers quicker. So I've got obviously Gemini built into my Gmail to help me understand what the results were from the emails that I'd already sent. Likewise on Gamma, for example, I can query a deck where I mention something and it can kind of give me the answers already. So it's a lot more mental strain. I definitely see the point about burnout, and to compensate that, which is kind of like adding fuel to the fires, I solved the AI problem by using AI again. Do you know what I mean? It's like AI can do more tests, but then to query those tests, I'm using AI again. So maybe it's a vicious circle, but yeah, it's a lot more data, I think, that's being shoved into our brains, and we're just trying to understand what it means. And sometimes it just means that we need to definitely take a break, a step back from the computer, think more strategically, rather than just being thrown into the data and just riding the wave, which can sometimes, that tidal wave can just be running a completely different direction to actually where you want to be going. But because the results are all saying one thing, you can end up over here, and your client actually wants theoretically to end up somewhere else. Yeah,
it's a really good point as well. And I think that the idea of solving AI with AI is actually quite intuitive. But I think the challenge that I have, and I think I wrote in our show notes when we were drafting these up, but the quote that my friend said to me when I was chatting to him about it, it was like, we're shifting from creators to editors, which I find quite an interesting one, where I think that it's something we need to be very careful with, is that we're putting, so much more task load on us. And quite often we are just, I say we, I'm saying that quite broadly. I'd like to think that we both do take pride and care in, what we're putting out and how we use AI. But I do know that for some people that are incredibly strapped for time, and this isn't saying that they're doing it maliciously or, they're doing it to, cut corners. There will be people out there that do that. But I think the way that AI is that we're shifting more from creators to editors, where people are almost being like their own, I suppose, warden for AI outputs instead of actually doing the work themselves. And I do have a bit of a challenge with it, where I think that critical thinking within people may actually decrease. And I know there's some studies that have been done on it, but I am, dare I say, worried, and it feels very old man of me at age 32 to be like, I'm concerned for generations to come that may see AI as commonplace, much like probably our parents did with digital, and the digital world that we grew up in where we were probably on the cusp of non-digital and digital, probably one of the only generations that has. But I am a bit reticent and I suppose a bit concerned around people just being editors and not flexing critical thinking or creative thinking. But yeah, I could go down an absolute rabbit hole with this, but I just wanted to raise it as a topic because I think it's one that's quite salient to me, and the impact it has on people's mental health and people's like actual workload.
And never mind people potentially losing jobs over AI as well. It's creating a lot of stress, but it's also potentially causing people to lose jobs. And there's so many companies out there that have threatened or actioned that they're going to cut the workforce because of AI, and they're quite open about that. And I think at the end of the day, investors and shareholders are ultimately concerned about money, and the wrong shareholders will just slash headcount because they just see it as a number, an expensive number over what could be quite a cheap in comparison AI tool. Now, I do think that's personally the wrong decision, but I think that a lot of companies will continue to do that. I think Meta have recently started cutting their workforce quite dramatically, and they've invested hundreds, literally, I don't think I made this number up, hundreds of billions of pounds in AI investment.
Which I think Disney have done it as well. I think it was when their new CEO took over in March this year. But essentially, they've cut, I think it's approximately like over 1,000 roles across marketing, studios, tech, and they're trying to merge them together into like one team, so it's centralized. And I think ESPN was affected by it as well, which is owned by Disney. But it's like that duplicate roles are being eliminated. But it's like, how much of that actually being driven by AI, where they need less people to do the same amount of work? But yeah, I'm a bit, I don't know, the American sort of way of doing things where it's like profit over people. Like, I know it's not just America, but it's probably where I think it originated. I'm a bit I don't know. It makes me a bit sad.
Yeah.
And God, this has gone quite dark.
We need the last few minutes to really cheer our audience up.
Really do.
I mean, one thing I love AI for, to completely spin on its head, is do you remember like good old VAR, how it all came in for that? And now there's almost like a bit of a backlash against all this AI and technology to say, we just need a good old human, get their opinion and go with that, rather than analysing things to the nth degree.
Yeah.
Just going with your gut and going with what you know is right.
Wait, so are they using AI within VAR now?
Oh, they definitely are in some way, shape or form. Maybe it's in some other leagues. Like I know maybe NFL, they've started
I don't follow football, so I don't follow many sports barring rugby, so I've got no idea.
I mean, I think they are starting to introduce it in some way, shape or form, but even the NFL, I think it is, or some American sport, they started to put cameras on the caps of referees and then following those guys around to get a second opinion. But also for entertainment, I think a lot of people like the live action shot of the referee running around the pitch first to see what the players' reactions like.
I completely agree. It'd be quite fun to see that.
AI for sports purposes, I think is definitely becoming, and even from a stats point of view, you know, all the players wear those sort of chest harnesses that have got the data tracker in, and the amount of data you can get now from a player in terms of the heart rate, the fatigue, where they're going, how many steps they're doing. Again, it's more of an entertainment purpose, but it also helps build them as an athlete. A bit like going to the point around, if I play this music, will it make me run quicker? Where you can start to understand, if we put them on a certain program, does it make them develop better in the pitch? I think AI in that sort of context is also definitely up and coming, because sport is a massive moneymaker. If if your team wins the Premier League, you're rolling in it. You know, you can sign the best players, you can win the Champions League, all that kind of stuff. So it's a bit of a vicious cycle, and I think AI in that side of things really, really interesting. Yeah,
it's back to the analysis piece, isn't it? But AI for analysis is actually really, really cool, and it actually speeds it up and allows humans to make the right informed decisions, especially if the data's right and the AI hasn't hallucinated and made up figures, which I think many episodes ago you mentioned around somebody using it, a workplace using AI that essentially just fabricated financial numbers, which is absolutely nuts.
Wild.
But as I said, like you've mentioned, like I use it for running and, you know, creating playlists. But there are apps out there, because I also weightlift as well, which is probably my main thing that I enjoy doing, like Olympic weightlifting. And there's apps out there that are now, instead of me having to, you know, look at my own progressive overload of how much I need to lift this week versus last week, you know, to get gains, like there's tools out there now that do it for you and build plans around and manipulate it using AI, which is absolutely dope. I use an app called I never know how to pronounce it. I pronounce it Jeffit. It's JEFIT.
Okay.
I always think it sounds a bit French, so I always pronounce it in a very weirdly French way. But that now has AI tooling built into it that allows you to look at, you know, nutrition, and then also look at actual lifts and see whether you are stalling in certain areas or whether you need to build certain muscle groups to, you know, improve overall lifting as well.
Nice.
That's pretty cool. I've not used it yet, but hopefully I'll report back, because I think it's something I want to trial. They've got like a 30-day free trial that I think I'm going to jump on and see how it goes.
That's really cool. It springs something randomly in my mind, but do you remember when you used to have to sort of scan products at the till every day and sort of scan nutrition factors, and then what people would do is they'd scan how many calories they've had in a meal and put that up? That's all becoming a lot more automated as well now. I know that there's certain products and there's certain things. Remember Amazon Fresh did it? There's certain other products companies that are doing it now, where you just take your trolley into the basket area and it'll automatically just know what's in your trolley, upload it. I think actually barcodes as we know them are going to be disappearing to QR codes in the future. Ooh. So maybe we talk about this more in the next episode, but they're going to have so much more information in this QR code, in terms of not just the product information and the nutritional information, but where it's shipped, how it's shipped, and you can use all of that to quickly get someone through a shopping experience, but also maybe upload that data straight onto, you know, an IA diet planning platform and stuff like that. So it's all very connected, and it's going to make everything a lot more quicker. So yeah, it's an interesting world, isn't it? It is an
interesting world. And on the, you know, diet side of things, I use MyFitnessPal to log my food. I do, you know, the barcode scanning, but I've seen, and I'm really skeptical about it. And I need somebody I know to show me it and whether it works. But there's so many apps out there now that apparently, like, you know, you can just take a picture of your food, and it will give you, you know, the estimated nutritional factors of that food. And I'm like, I just don't understand how it can do that, especially being vegetarian. I eat an absolute plethora of tofu and, you know, black beans and other bits like that. How does it know the actual gram amount that I'm actually eating? Because I'm like, it's just never going to do it.
Yeah, I was going to say how many black beans are hidden under the other black beans.
Yeah, exactly.
And what's the weight of it? I know if I just get my sort of creative hat on there, there's going to be AI tools that monitor the weight of something in your fridge, and if you take the whole can of beans out, it's going to put all the calorie count behind your meal and stuff like that. There's obviously cameras in fridges already now telling you, like, if you need milk and if you run out. So it's going to be just mind blowing. But I think that's a fascinating part of it, and quite an interesting way for us to end this episode, I think.
Oh, absolutely. I feel it's been a relatively short episode as this one, but I feel that we've covered a lot of topic very, very quickly.
Haven't we? Yeah, it's been really, really interesting. It's been a whirlwind.
So thanks for watching, guys. Yet again, me and Chris are eternally grateful for anyone that tunes in, pays attention. But if you can, give us a like, give us a follow, subscribe, give us a comment. We're interested in hearing what you guys have to say, and we want feedback on this as well. But as always, we're eternally grateful for everybody tuning in and I suppose supporting some small content creators. But until next time, I've been Nick. This has been Chris Nightingale, and we'll catch you next time.
See you later, guys. Thanks for tuning in.